Once upon a time, a solitary ogre lived in a cave on top of a hill. The hill rose above the tops of a prickly pine forest, and the ogre would look out over the greenery as his stomach rumbled. "I'm so hungry I could eat a man," he grumbled. He had just risen from an uneasy night of a half sleep on a hungry stomach. He walked down from his cave on top of the hill and down into the pine forest. He lurched through the trees, the top of his bumpy head brushing the bottoms of the branches. His skin was tough, and the prickly pines did not bother him much, aside from a slight tickling. He searched the forest, but the only living creatures he saw were birds, fleeing at his approach as he jostled the prickly pine branches. He came back home hungrier than before. The sun set, and the hill and the cave on top of the hill cast a long shadow over the tops of the prickly pine trees. The ogre slept, gut growling. A new day dawned, and the ogre came out of his cave. He looked out over the top of the prickly pine forest. His stomach rumbled. "I'm so hungry I could eat two men," he said. He blinked the half-sleep from his eyes and walked down the hill into the pine forest. He lurched through the trees, the top of his head bumping the beneaths of the prickly pine branches. His skin was tough, but the prickly pines began bothering him, every touch irritating him further than the one before. He searched the forest, but all he saw were birds fleeing and some insubstantial beetles crawling on a wounded, sap-oozing tree. He licked the bark, but the beetles were sour and he spat them out. He came back home hungrier than before. The sun set, and the hill and the cave on top of the hill cast a long shadow over the tops of the prickly pine trees. The ogre slept, stomach thudding with pain. A new day dawned, and the ogre lurched out of his cave. He looked out over the tops of the prickly pine forest. His stomach wailed and twisted. "I'm so hungry I could eat 10 men," he rasped. He blinked the half-sleep away and stumbled down the hill into the forest. He lurched through the trees, the top of his head scraping against thousands of pine needles. His skin was tough, but he hated pine trees now, with a bright fiery passion that welled up from his thudding stomach. He searched the forest and saw birds far above him in the tops of the branches. He searched some more and saw sap encrusted on bark and beetles mating on top of it. He kept walking even as the sun set, and he came to a giant dark cave, 20 times larger than his cave. "I've never seen this before," he said, and feeling he had nothing to lose, entered. He walked deep into the dark cave, feeling the way with his large rough hands. The cave was completely stone, so far as the ogre could feel, and very dry beneath his dirty feet. He walked farther, going down into the ground as the cave wound its way beneath the roots of the pines. He rounded a bend and saw a blue light coming from large blue mushrooms growing from the stones in the cave floor. As his eyes adjusted to the strange light, he saw a gigantic shape in the near dark. It was round on top and spiky at the bottom. It was 20 times the size of the ogre, and it looked at him with dozens of eyes. "Why are you down here?" Its mouth was twice as long as the ogre was tall, and filled with hundreds of needle-thin and needle-sharp teeth. Each tooth was as long as the ogre's arm. "I am so hungry," the ogre said. "I cannot find any food. I am dying." "I will help you," the thing said. "Take one of my teeth from my mouth." "Well, this is it," thought the ogre. "It's going to eat me." The ogre moved up to the thing, and the thing opened its mouth wide. The ogre grabbed one of the needle teeth and yanked it from the spongy gum with a wet splorching sound. "Plant it next to your home," the thing said, "and when you catch something, bring me my share. I am the owl, and I must be fed." The ogre left with the owl's tooth and walked many hours through the forest in the dead of the night. When he finally arrived back at his cave on top of the hill, it was dawn. He jabbed the needle tooth of the owl into the hill and lurched into his cave, collapsing into his straw bed and falling straight asleep. Some time later, the ogre was awakened by strange music. He looked up, but was so tired from walking and from hunger that he did not care to find its source. He laid his head back down and fell asleep again. Later, he was awakened by a voice. He sat up on his straw bed and listened. "Hello?" the voice called. It was a little voice. The ogre got up and came to the mouth of his cave and looked out. He saw a man with his hands raised, standing next to the needle-tooth, which was glowing blue and emitting strange music. "What are you saying?" the man asked the needle-tooth. The needle-tooth sang, strange and drunkenly, almost in words. They were blurred words, as though being spoken deep inside an echoing cave. "What are you trying to tell me?" the man asked the tooth. The ogre's stomach growled, and the ogre growled. The ogre's stomach roared, and the ogre roared, and was upon the man. The man fell to the ground, and the ogre held him down. The ogre bit into the man's face, and the man screamed. The strange music blended with his scream, harmonizing, but maintaining its blurry melody. In a matter of minutes, the ogre had eaten the man from head to torso, gnawing his arms down to cracked bones and sucking out the marrow. He picked up a leg, but something in the strange music changed. Almost like a voice, it lashed out at him, and he looked to the needle-tooth, clutching the leg in his blood-soaked hands. The ogre picked up the other leg and walked down from the bloody hill and into the prickly pine forest. He blinked the bloodlust from his eyes and practically ran towards the cave, not noticing the pricking of the pines or the scattering of the birds or the mating of the sap-sucking beetles. It was very nearly evening when the ogre reached the giant cave where the owl dwelled. He went inside, deep into the earth, deep below the roots of the pines, clutching the deliciously meaty legs of the man to his chest the whole time. He lurched through the cave, not feeling his way this time, until he came to the cavern of the glowing mushrooms, and laid the meaty legs on the cold stone floor. "You have pleased me," the owl said, opening its gorge of a mouth, and looking at the ogre and the meaty remains of the carcass with its dozens of eyes. "The next time you catch something, bring me my share. I am the owl, and I must be fed." And so it was that the ogre fed the owl to feed himself. He was often tempted to finish his meals in fits of hunger, but the strange music would rise, like a voice shrieking from the needle-tooth. By the time the next creature wandered to his hill in the pine forest, be it man, pig, horse, goat, he was ravenous from hours of walking to and from the deep dark lair of his master. But nevertheless, spending every moment of your life making sure the owl is fed is better than going hungry yourself.